Chapter 27, in which a lesson on fiction reveals certain truths. Carrie slipped into the chart room early, choosing a seat near the back with a clear view of the lectern. Bit pathetic, Watson. Coming to stare at him like a lovesick teenager when you spent half the day in his bed. The room filled quickly, far more than the sparse crowd that had attended Crispin's first session. Word of mouth worked like lightning on a ship this size. She tucked her camera bag under her chair and surveyed the room with a photographer's analytical eye. Shot. The hopeful congregation. 100 aspiring writers, notebooks open, pens poised. Lighting. Warm afternoon sun through portholes. Mood. Anticipation. These people had no idea they were witnessing a man transformed. To them, Crispin Shrike was simply a successful author sharing his craft. They didn't know about the pedantic lecturer who'd droned about sacred responsibility and custodianship just days ago. They didn't know what she'd done to him, or what he'd done to her. None of them had any idea that she still carried the scent of his sandalwood soap on her skin, that her muscles ached pleasantly from their lovemaking, that somewhere in the depths of her bag was a torn corner of stationery with his home number hastily scrawled upon it. When Crispin entered, her breath caught despite herself. He moved differently now, still that characteristic slight awkwardness, but with a new undercurrent of purpose. His jacket was buttoned neatly, but she spotted the detail immediately. A tiny crease on his collar where her fingers had twisted the fabric that morning as she'd pulled him down for one more kiss. Shot. The reluctant performer. Subject. Transformed. Lighting. Still too harsh. Expression. Nervous but not terrified. Claire introduced him with professional warmth, and he stepped to the lectern with a self-deprecating smile.
Right, well, thank you for coming.
He ran a hand through his hair.
I'm absolutely terrified, which probably isn't the most confidence-inspiring way to begin, but there we are.
The audience laughed. Carrie didn't. She was watching the way his eyes scanned the room, the micro-hesitation when he found her, the almost imperceptible softening of his expression before he looked away. He's searching for me. Even here. Even now.
I'm Crispin. Well, you know who I am, presumably, or you wouldn't be here staring at me with such expectant faces. I have written 1 or 2 books about the Regency period, and I did spend an alarming amount of time researching them, mostly to avoid actually writing, which is what all writers do, isn't it? We panic about putting pen to paper and do anything else instead.
More laughter. He was working them expertly now, the academic stiffness melting into something warmer as he spoke about Jane Austen, about how she'd written her contemporary world rather than historical fiction.
She was writing about drawing rooms she'd actually sat in and social conventions that would have made her want to scream, rather like being trapped at a particularly dreadful dinner party for your entire life.
His hands traced patterns in the air, elegant and expressive. Those same hands had mapped the contours of her body mere hours ago, had tangled in her hair, had trembled against her skin.
The thing about being at sea,
He continued,
is that ships were absolutely central to Regency life. The navy, trade, travel, scandal, romance. It all happened on the water. So we're rather perfectly positioned to explore how to write about this period.
The man who pontificated about the sanctity of facts is gone. In his place, a storyteller, breathing life into ghosts instead of cataloguing their bones. She'd done that. She'd opened a door with a single question, and he'd walked through it. The workshop proceeded with surprising energy. Crispin guided them through character creation, the dramatic possibilities of a maritime setting, the balance between historical accuracy and narrative drive. He moved through the room, reading over shoulders, offering encouragement.
Oh, this is delicious.
He exclaimed over someone's work.
A naval chaplain who's lost his faith. Brilliant, but why? That's what we need to know. What happened at sea that shook his certainty?
His enthusiasm was genuine, infectious. The participants leaned forward, scribbling notes. When he posed a writing exercise, create a character at sea and describe their deepest secret or greatest fear, Carrie pulled out the Cunard notebook from under her chair. The heavy paper felt expensive under her fingers. Around her, pens scratched furiously. She stared at the blank page. What's my character's deepest fear? But she wasn't thinking about fictional Regency sailors. She was thinking about the real man at the front of the room, the one whose life she'd disrupted as thoroughly as he'd disrupted hers. Her hand moved almost without conscious thought. The lady on the shore watched his ship sail toward the horizon, not knowing if the salt on her lips was from the sea or from her own tears. She looked down at what she'd written, startled by its appearance on the page. It wasn't the assigned exercise. It was simply the truth, waiting to ambush her.
5 more minutes.
Crispin called. Carrie felt him before she saw him. A shift in the air, the subtle displacement that came from another body moving into her orbit. His hand came to rest on her shoulder. The world contracted to that single point of contact. The room's chatter faded. The afternoon sun streaming through the porthole dimmed. There was only the warmth of his palm through the thin fabric of her blouse, the gentle pressure of his fingers, the deliberate nature of the touch. It lasted perhaps 2 seconds. Anything longer would have drawn attention. But in those 2 seconds, a universe of unspoken communication passed between them. Recognition, gratitude, desire, and the terrible acknowledgement of time running out. Then his hand was gone, and he was moving on to the next participant, his professional mask firmly back in place. Carrie exhaled slowly, her heart hammering.
The thing about historical fiction,
He said, as he returned to the lectern, his voice quieter now, forcing the room to lean in.
is that research is crucial, but it's not the story.
That's new.
You can know everything about rigging and naval ranks and the price of tea in Portsmouth, but if your characters don't feel real, if their emotions don't leap off the page, then you've merely written a very detailed history textbook.
A woman in the front row was nodding vigorously. Carrie found herself doing the same.
Jane Austen never described what her characters looked like in great detail. She didn't spend pages explaining how a carriage worked or what exactly went into a morning dress.
His hands moved through the air, conducting invisible music.
She focused on what people said, what they thought, how they felt, how they misunderstood each other spectacularly, and then somehow found their way to happiness.
His eyes found Carrie's across the room. The connection was brief but electric.
Your Regency characters should feel as real and immediate as your best friend or your most annoying relative. They happen to be wearing different clothes and worrying about different things. Though actually, they're probably worrying about exactly the same things we all worry about.
He paused, his expression softening with something that looked almost like wonder.
Love, money, family, reputation, and whether they're making a complete hash of their lives.
The room was utterly silent. Even the eager note-takers had stopped writing, caught in the spell of his words. Carrie's throat tightened. She recognized the shift in him, the crack in his carefully constructed edifice. This wasn't a workshop anymore. This was confession disguised as pedagogy.
The ship is the setting. The period details are the costume, the story, the human story. That's what will make readers turn pages at midnight and recommend your book to everyone they know.
Look what I did. The thought arrived with a rush of fierce pride. I opened a door, and he walked through it. He's magnificent. Crispin straightened, that familiar self-deprecating smile returning.
So go forth, write terrible first drafts, research obsessively, and remember that even Jane Austen probably had moments where she thought, oh God, this is absolute rubbish. The difference between writers and everyone else is that writers keep writing anyway.
His gaze swept the room once more, pausing fractionally on Carrie.
The thing about sea voyages,
He added, almost as an afterthought.
is that they're naturally dramatic. You can't pop round to the neighbours when things get awkward. You're stuck together. It's rather like a country house mystery, except the house is moving and might sink.
Yes, a country house mystery. And we're the two people who know exactly where the murder weapon is hidden.
And if anyone would like to discuss their work further, I'll be at the bar later, probably having a small nervous breakdown about my own writing. Do join me.
He grinned sheepishly.
Thank you all for being such good sports. Now go write something wonderful.
The applause was genuine and sustained. Carrie joined in, her palms stinging with each clap. Around her, participants gathered their materials, chatting excitedly. A small crowd formed at the front, surrounding Crispin with questions and praise. A woman with silver-streaked hair touched his arm. A young man thrust a notebook forward for an autograph. Carrie watched as he was absorbed back into his world. The world of words and ideas, of literary festivals and publishing contracts. The world where she was a visitor, not a resident. She reached for her camera bag, but didn't pull out the camera. This moment didn't need documentation. She was already filing it away in the permanent archive of memory. Final shot. Separate worlds. Foreground. Eager students clustering around their teacher. Background. A woman observing from the margins. Composition. The distance between them speaks volumes. Title. The space between. She stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Crispin glanced up from his admirers, finding her across the crowded room. His expression shifted, a flash of longing, quickly masked, but not quickly enough. She offered him a small smile. Not sad, not regretful, just knowing. Then she turned and slipped out of the chart room, leaving him to his audience, his world, his life that had briefly intersected with hers, but would soon diverge irrevocably. The corridor outside was quieter. Through a nearby porthole, she could see the ocean rolling past, endless and indifferent. Tomorrow they would reach Sydney. Tomorrow this beautiful, impossible thing would end. But today, she had witnessed a transformation. She had seen a man step out from behind his defenses and speak from the heart. Whatever happened next, she'd given him that. And he'd given her something equally precious. Proof that connection, real, profound, soul-deep connection, was possible, even if it couldn't last. She walked toward the lifts, her footsteps quiet on the plush carpet, carrying with her the phantom warmth of his hand on her shoulder, and the certain knowledge that some moments, once lived, could never be unlived. They simply became part of who you were,